We just cured
I know, I
cancer,
did.
dude.
The second time.
We cured cancer, diabetes, and and addiction. Is
Yep.
beautiful. So
Missed
it's
it.
too bad we didn't record that.
Can you describe the connection you see between unresolved trauma and the development of addictive behaviors?
No, no, I'm kidding. Okay, so the connection between unresolved trauma and addiction. So one of the things that we've found is when pain goes undiagnosed and trauma is unprocessed, it continues to create more and more pain. When we're in pain as human beings, we want to do anything we can to avoid pain. Actually, I've done a lot of studies on this, and as human beings and even animals too, will do far more to avoid pain than they will to actually seek pleasure. So anytime you find something that not only avoids the pain but actually increases the pleasure at the same time, that's what becomes addictive. So one of the driving motivational factors actually of addiction is I don't either know I have something to process or I don't want to feel the pain this is bringing. So I look to sedate, I look to numb out, I look for other ways that I don't have to deal with what it is. And this is the cycle of chaos that we continue to see again and again and again. So the first step, and this is typically one of the more difficult steps, is to stop the cycle of sedation in order to, and this is what pisses a lot of people off, in order to actually feel the pain and to understand the trauma, to begin to process it at the core level. But the beauty of this is once you do process pain at the core level or trauma, an organic byproduct is you no longer look to numb or sedate. Life becomes so much more beautiful, so much more intriguing and joyful and fulfilling. And so that's why we break the cycle initially from the physical dependency to get to the emotional and the spiritual trauma, to process that, to change the life.
All right, now follow up on that. How do you think addressing trauma can support long term recovery?
Well, yeah, so that ties into the question we just answered before is if you don't, you revert back to the cycle. So anytime I do not, if something is assessed and I look to sedate instead of actually do the work, it's going to keep coming up again and again. And addiction is a progressive disease. What that means is it gets worse and worse and worse, typically at a faster level with bigger consequences. And so this is where we find a lot of people struggle is they either don't address it at the core level or they do a little bit of surface work and they have this false sense of security of I did the work. We hear this quite often. Oh yeah, I did therapy or I did the work. The work is something you do, not what you did. And as I do the work daily, I continue to grow and expand. And this is the new, I call it the new approved addiction. When the addiction becomes, I want to create the elite version of me, which means I pull everything up and I deal with the insecurities, I deal with the core problems, and now I get to create this next version of me. Guess what? This next version we just bring over here and do the same thing. And this is the beautiful part of life is it's rinse repeat, and we continue to expand and evolve and find this beautiful freedom to create instead of sedate.
Wonderful. All right, what are some of the most common misconceptions you've encountered about addiction and mental health?
The most common misconceptions of addiction and mental health. Well, let's start with addiction. One of the most common misconceptions is it's a willpower thing or just stop it. Um, I remember this. You could probably Google it or on YouTube. It's Bob Newhart. It's hilarious. He's a therapist and he makes people pay up front. And so it's a one time, the guy writes the check. He goes, okay. He says, okay, tell me your problem. The person goes into their whole problem. He goes, okay, great. Stop it. Okay, thank you so much for coming in. And then the next person comes in. The reason why I share that is because if it were as simple as we can change behavior by someone saying stop it, then we would be one of the healthiest societies to ever walk the earth. The issue is we're so ingrained in behavior, it's fight or flight. This is the part that is so misunderstood is that it's not a thing of willpower. It's not a thing of, well, just stop it. It's a thing of exposing what is driving that behavior. We call it the core lie. Once we expose the core lie and we start doing the work to actually process and heal from this, now another organic byproduct is I no longer want to sedate. So that's to answer the addiction side. With mental health, a lot of times they go hand in hand. If the brain chemistry is off, a person feels a certain way. When they sedate, they don't feel that way anymore. And this continues the pattern. So the first process, or excuse me, the first misconception is is stop with the addiction. And then the other part with the mental health, we see a lot of people, it's very similar. It's, well, just get on some medication and then you're going to be fine. Well, if you look at the studies of the medication, and just so you know, I am not anti medication. We do a lot of medication assisted management here. Um, but to have a belief of just get on medication and it will solve or resolve the trauma, the problems, the brain chemistry, what they've found in these studies is a lot of this medication actually has worse side effects for certain people at certain levels than not taking the medication. And so, what the medication does, this is one of the best examples that I heard a doctor say. If your brain chemistry is off, you're not creating one of the chemicals that is necessary to function at a high level as a human being. When you find medication, it gives you a level playing field. So it's like if you're trying to play soccer with one leg and everybody else has two legs, you're at a disadvantage. That medication gives you the second leg. But if you don't practice soccer, if you don't actually do the work to get better, then you're just going to be a person out there that has the equivalence of everybody else, but is not practicing at that level. So this is why we take medication to help with the brain chemistry to regulate, but there's work still involved in order to overcome what it is that is driving that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And how would someone work to break those stigmas?
Well, the first part of most stigmas is the fear of what someone might say or how they might view an individual. There's a wonderful book that just comes to my mind. It's called "The Top Five Regrets of the Dying" by I want to say Beatty is the name. But one of the biggest regrets of all these people that she was a hospice nurse helping out said they wish they would have been more true to themselves and depend a lot less on what others would say or how they would view them. The problem is human nature. We It's hardwired into our DNA of what other people think because we want to subscribe to a tribe, because if we are left to our own defenses, and this is all way back in our ancestry, then it means death, physical death to us. So we're still operating off of the same brain. And so when people don't approve, when they don't validate, when they don't accept us, that part of the brain hits off. This is going to be worse than dying. So I need to get this validation. Once we're able to begin to override that, or just kind of care a little bit less, and it's very difficult, but caring less of what others think and we be true to ourselves, that's where we start finding people actually really reside in this level of happiness and fulfillment. So the way we break the stigma is to be authentic to yourself and to be open, knowing that some people are going to resonate. Some people you're actually going to help change their life because they're going to see you thriving and say, wait, you suffer from this too. And there's always going to be some people that you piss off, they don't approve, and they're going to be vocal behind a keyboard with some cat as their avatar. We've had a few of those.
All right. So, how would you define the difference between a mental health challenge and a mental health disorder? And why is that distinction important?
I don't know if I understand that question. The difference between a mental health disorder
And a
and
mental
a
health
mental health
challenge?
challenge.
Yeah.
I guess I would need the context more of that question. I guess maybe a challenge would be if someone is high functioning and maybe wakes up a little bit depressed one day or is having a bad day. Maybe if that's the context of, oh, yeah, they're having a bad day. Well, I would say it's part of the human experience, not to discount it, but life has this beautiful way, and I'll get to the beautiful part in a second, of having these beautiful ups where we're at the peaks of the mountaintop, looking at the view, going, this was amazing. And then the pits of those valleys of it's cold, it's dark, and that actually creates the polarity so we can enjoy. Imagine if all we did was everything was great. Like I think to some of the best movies I've ever seen. I can't think of a single movie that the protagonist, the main character or hero, had the perfect life and everything went awesome. And they just continued to win no matter what they did. All the movies and heroes that we love have these moments of just pure pain and these challenges. But even with these challenges, that's typically what creates the perseverance and the purpose to overcome that point of pain that leads them to this peak. So I'm thinking the way that that was phrased, that is more of a mental health challenge of having off days versus a mental health disorder, which is a brain chemistry issue, meaning that for some reason the brain just doesn't create this chemical. So I love using the analogy of diabetes. It doesn't mean a person's bad. It doesn't mean anything. It just means, oh, my body doesn't produce this. So I have to regulate it externally. And when I do, I actually enjoy life. Now, I still have to make healthy decisions. I still have to make sure I'm regulating everything and measuring everything, but my body just doesn't produce the insulin. So I have to bring that in. So, that analogy I use for the mental health disorder because we're all created a little bit different. And if our brain is not creating a certain chemical that either feels good or helps with regulation, then we want to look at what are ways that we can begin to overcome that. So that's where medication plays a wonderful role of evening that playing field while still doing the holistic work to make sure that we're getting those reps in.
All right, what role does community and connection play in healing from both addiction and mental health struggles?
I love this question of community because one of the best definitions I've ever heard of addiction is isolation. I've met people, but also I remember when I was really struggling with depression, I could be in a room of everyone that loves me and I love them, but I could still feel utterly alone. And so even around people, if I am feeling isolated or lonely, it's a huge issue. So having a community that you can be real with, you can be raw and totally open, you can be authentic, you can be vulnerable, all these different words. It is so imperative to growing. I mean, I know in business, one of the first things they teach you is if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with other people. It's very similar in life when we build this beautiful tribe, this community, and this is one of the things that AA does so beautifully, is it creates a community of other people wanting to grow in all different levels across the spectrum. Some are way further than a newcomer, others are newcomers and everything in between. And by hearing stories of hope and strength and seeing examples of people that are living by this life auditing lifestyle, it's a beautiful thing. So community, I think, is one of the most important things in overcoming addiction.
And that was the next thing is how have you seen isolation influence relapse or emotional decline?
Oh
What
yeah.
was it
So
like?
I remember, man, this was a long time ago, but a friend of mine had a dog, and when it got old, it would kind of disappear, and for a few days, it would just kind of take off and just isolate. And the sad thing is it actually ended up dying after doing that for a few days. There's this innate quality in animals, which is we tend to want to remove ourselves from the herd when we feel that death is coming. The reason why I say that is because if I am isolating, it actually is the precursor to really this progressive disease of addiction. And I've seen a lot of people pull away due to, and a lot of this is unconscious, due to guilt, due to shame, due to thinking they're going to be judged or condemned, and that actually accelerates the fire or the igniter to really spinning out of control and going down hard. So one of the biggest things is they say the phone gets so heavy when we make a poor choice. One of my favorite sayings is my sins look terrible on you. When I'm able to self reflect and to say, even though I'm making some mistakes, even though I'm not living in congruence with what I feel I am to do here, I'm still going to reach out to people that are safe. I'm still going to go and reach out and have these conversations that might be difficult because that's where the healing takes place. When I pull away and isolate and get stuck up here, I mean, this is where most of the damage is done, is when I stay in my head. But when I'm able to go to my heart and say, no matter what I've done, I can own it, I can become accountable, I can change it by sharing openly, that pain gets divided, and then we're able to do the healing. So it plays a huge part.
All right. In your opinion, what's the relationship between spiritual development or purpose and long term emotional and behavior change?
Read that question again.
In your opinion, what's the relationship between spiritual development or purpose and long term emotional and behavioral change?
Got it. So spiritual development and purpose in relation to lifelong change.
Mhm.
I think there's a huge correlation. I remember the first time I read a quote by Dr. Dwayne Dyer that says, "We are spiritual beings having a human experience." I'd never heard it that way, and that way resonated so much with me because I thought, wow, when I look at myself as a human being with a soul, it hits different. But when I look at myself as a spiritual being with a body, it's like, wow, there's so much more to this life that I don't understand. And this is why I call it Christ consciousness. When I commune with my creator every single day, I ask difficult questions. I cultivate this relationship. It's the most intimate relationship in my life, and I'm very close with my wife, my kids, friends, family. But my relationship with my Creator is the most important thing. And one of the things that I love about having the podcast here is I want to say every single person. I can't think of one. Every single person has said this spirituality, this communing with the creator has been one of the most integral parts of their healing. The term I hear all the time in the program is a spiritual awakening. And I just think it's so beautiful because when we are closed off to something bigger than ourselves, I know when I'm in the most pain is when I think I'm the center of my universe. My mind just does some messed up stuff and there's really no hope. When I look at this and say, my spirit is here to be guided, my spirit is here to help and to serve and to be used for good. It not only feels good, but it allows me to do things that I'm not able to do on my own. So I don't think they just go hand in hand. I think they're interwoven with each other of spirituality and purpose linked to long-term healing and continual growth. I I personally don't know of how to have one without the other.
What tools or practices have you found to be the most grounding or helpful in early recovery or during emotional crisis?
So some of the tools that are most beneficial, I know early in my journey of just looking to become a better person and to heal from the pain of the past was to just listen and do the work. For some reason, asking questions and define is what created so much pain for me. And we've seen that here too. I mean, some of our longest case studies of 12 years, 16 years, they've all said the same thing of I learned to just listen and then do. And for some reason, when we subscribe to a certain philosophy or we have a proven concept and we can see that it works, by listening and doing the work, that has helped really streamline the process because anytime I tend to think I'm so unique and different or I can shortcut a process, it actually takes such a longer time.
How do you maintain empathy and compassion for someone in active addiction while also setting and holding healthy boundaries?
This is a wonderful question. How to maintain empathy while still setting boundaries. And this one is tough and I don't know if there's a perfect answer because I know for the first several years I had so much empathy, it turned into sympathy and then I would enable. And I still had boundaries, but I would enable even with those boundaries, thinking this is the right way. And then I think that's one thing that leads to burnout so fast in relationships, in professional relationships as well. And so I think empathy is important, but there's also something to be said about holding clear boundaries and saying, so here's what comes up for me empathy of saying, I love you regardless of what you do, but to have the boundary to say, I'm only going to be involved when you are in solution. And that is really tough sometimes because we tend to combine the two of empathy and lack of boundaries because a lot of our childhood growing up there's certain things that we learn to do in order to experience that love, so love gets tied to being somebody, being the best or doing something. And so it's really tough. I don't think there's a perfect black and white answer. I think there's a lot of gray area and it's different for each person and it's different in each season. So I guess, of giving yourself permission of trial and error to see what does work, what doesn't work, and having an outside counsel. I call it my internal board of advisors, people that you can bounce these things off of to get outside feedback. Because when I'm involved emotionally, it's so difficult to stay non biased. And so, yeah, empathy and boundaries are this ever fluid exchange.
How has working in or being around recovery and mental health back up? How has working in or being around recovery and mental health changed? And-
What had happened
how has
was,
working in recovery changed the way you look at healing, growth, and resilience?
mm, first of all, I love being in the mental health and recovery field for addiction because you're surrounded by people that are wanting to better themselves every day.
Mm.
Before I did this, it was rare. There was only a few conferences that I'd been to, and a very few small amount of people that said, "I want to become better. I want to look at all the insecurities I have, all the areas of life that create pain, and I want to continue to work lifelong." That's one thing I love about the program is when they say one day at a time. It's such a beautiful and freeing way to live when I say, okay, how do I become just a little bit better today than I was yesterday? As I start to live this way, life gets better and better and better. I learn more and more lessons. And one of the things that at least I've learned, I hear this all the time, is it's like the more you learn, the more you understand you really don't know anything.
Mm.
And it's this beautiful cycle of becoming more and more humble that you don't know while you're actually getting more knowledge and better at what you do know.
Mm.
And so being around people every day that say, I want help. I want to learn how to think better, how to be better, how to love better, how to show up better. And there's a part of me that continues to sabotage that. How do we have this conversation? In my book, The Recovery Way, I call it the new AA, the new approved addiction. When we give the destructive addiction a seat and we do the work, and now the new approved addiction becomes, how do I continue to get better and chase this future version of me, knowing I will never catch the perfect version of me, but I can't wait to meet me a year from now, and then 10 years from now, and then 20 years from now. And it's a never ending process. So that is the beauty of being in this field of just constant conscious expansion.
So, if someone is currently, hesitant about getting into treatment and taking the leap, have never have done it, what is treatment to you, and how can we calm someone down that would be nervous, that needs to go to treatment but is nervous to do it?
Yeah, I think hesitation to go get help is totally normal. And it's actually, it's this might sound weird, but it's actually, it's something that I appreciate
Mm.
because it means the person really is open and having this internal conflict of I want help. I know the way I'm living is not what I was meant for, and there's got to be a different way. And so the way that I view it is there's the healthy self and the addict self, and they're just sitting there arguing with each other. And this is what creates this internal conflict. And so, first, conflict can actually be good because when I develop conflict, it means something's about to change or happen. Um, so, to answer the question of if someone is on the fence or struggling, first, that it's totally normal with what you're thinking, what you're feeling is totally normal, and to give yourself permission to feel that. I know a lot of times people say, "Well, don't be nervous, don't be." It's like, no, 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 sit in that. Actually, allow it to talk to you. And I have a lot of conversations with the different parts of me. Of one of the questions I love is if an emotion comes up and I notice I'm trying to stuff it and it keeps coming up, I'll say, "What is it that you're wanting from me?" And what's amazing is almost always it guides me to the right place. It says, I just want to know we're going to be safe, or I just want to know that even if we do this and we fail, that we'll still be able to make it. Like there's so many different things that come up. So of just knowing it's totally normal and to ask the questions. Don't hide from asking the questions. If you're wondering, well, what does it look like, to ask what does it look like? And then to be open to honest answers such as it's going to be tough. I would love to tell people, oh, there's no work involved. You show up, you snap a finger, or you open this magic golden box, and because you now know information, it changes.
Mm.
I don't think it's about education anymore. I mean, we've kind of surpassed the information age. People can get the information for free anywhere at any time nowadays. I think we've moved more from education to application and execution.
Mm.
And so that's where we still do education here, but the biggest thing is how do you apply what you learn and create and turn it into these habits that now become this new way of living. And what we found is when people let the old habits that were destructive die off and develop these new habits that are constructive start to take place, that's where we see these lives completely turn around. And like one of my favorite things is doing like the 6 month follow up, the 1 year follow up, just checking in to see where people are when they continue to do the work, even once they leave treatment, and seeing the businesses that are built, the people that are being helped, the impact that they're making in this world, the families that are started, the generational curses that are completely changed. It's one of the most beautiful things. So on the other end of fear is the freedom that you've been looking for.
So, if someone's currently in their addiction right now and currently dependent on an opiate, whatever it may be, alcohol, when someone new is newly sober, they have a lot of cravings. How quickly do those cravings go away in your experience?
Oh, I would love the magic answer to say immediately the moment you make the decision, but that's not true. It is different for everybody. We've seen some people come in and after detox, magically they're like, wow, I don't have any more cravings. That's rare. We've seen some people even 6 months later, the cravings will still pop up. So I would say a better question would be, how do I have cravings and continue to move forward? Just like, how can I wake up one day and not be motivated, but still do the work that I know I need to do to continue to become the version that I know I was put here on earth to become? So that's one of the things that we teach here is how not to listen to that inner dialogue, how not to revert back because of feelings or emotions, but to actually get to the core why that's bringing this part up. So in the beginning, there's a lot of things we do. We do medication assisted detox, different things that can help with the cravings. But there's not a magic number. There's not a magic thing people can do.
Mm.
But what I can say is when you stay the course, it does get less and less, and eventually. Well, from the people that I've talked with and followed up with is it goes away, but it's different for everybody. Just stay in the game long enough.
All right, that's everything I got.
Beautiful.
Thank you.